Successful Indie Author 5-Minute Focus, episode 146, Transitions for Better Story Flow. I talk about stories as scenes, pearls that are then knotted together and individually knotted, not where you cut the thing and they all fall off. That's low rent stuff, where you have knotted in between those pearls. So what do those knots look like? That's where it's when you move from one scene to the next. Instead of jumping right into it, there's a slight transition to help ease the reader and move them from the one scene to the next. I like the open loops where you leave the reader hanging, like two people standing off, and then you end it there. A scene change or a chapter change, and then you pick up on the next one with either a new POV or a new element or a new part of the story. And that is an abrupt change, and it's intentional. It's intentional to keep the readers reading. So you don't need to flow from one to the other with something obtuse like, and he was thinking about this odd thing, and then next scene is this odd thing. No, don't do that unless it's a natural flow of your scenes. Scene setup, when you're setting up a scene, it's either physical, intellectual, or emotional. The physical scene is a change in geographical location. Sometimes I use geotags. I start off, instead of using a scene break of like 3 asterisks or this cool line or the variety of scene breaks that are used, I'll use a geotag, like this spaceship in orbit around this planet, especially if I'm jumping around a galaxy. That's sometimes you need to do that because otherwise you lose readers and trying to smooth in like, oh, hey, he was on the promenade of the Onyx station. You try to smooth that in. Nah, that's a little, just put the geotag. And a lot of movies you see that, hey, here's the spaceship. Here's the spaceship. Expanse does it. And it's wildly popular. So it's okay. It's okay when done right. Everything's okay when you do it right. Intellectual. This is a mental exercise, a psychological challenge, something that flows from one mental state to the next, especially through a scene change, through a chapter change, through any transition that you're making. I don't have a good example of that. And right now, this comes to mind, right? I do this off the top of my head. An emotional scene change. When you want to leave somebody with something, there's that fear, and the pistol went off and he fell, and then you move to the next scene. It's like, what the hell? Because you're leaving him hanging. So what do you do from there? Either pick up with a new POV, a new element of the story. If you have separate tendrils, Tom Clancy's style, where you have 3 different stories going simultaneously, and then they blend together through that final stretch to the end. Or that he fell, and then pick it up with when he opened his eyes later. Okay, now you've transitioned. Okay, here's this. It left me hanging, so you get them to the next chapter. They start reading. Nobody can end in the middle of a chapter. So all you have to do is get them to reading that next chapter, and you win. You want them to keep reading and read the whole book in one sitting. That's the win. That's the biggest win. So emotional. You take them, okay, good. He's okay, but how okay is he? That's the transition, because that how okay is he, that's answered in the next scene. But the transition, he opened his eyes. Okay, felt like crap, whatever it might be. But that's the transition. It's not like the shot rang out and he fell, and then instantly he's in another scene where he's talking to somebody. That's what I'm talking about, stringing them together. How does he get to where now he's talking to somebody? You gotta tie every scene together, and it could be just a few words, but it has to flow from, here's this high, this is this, you left them in a certain emotional state or a certain physical status, and now they're in a new physical status, a new emotional state. How did they get there? Even if it's like, oh, he woke up. Okay, now you're ready for that next scene. Simple, but you got to do it, and you'll read books and you'll be jarred, and you won't understand why. That's why the scenes aren't tied together. There's no knot between those pearls. Chronological. I write almost exclusively chronologically. I really, really don't like stories that you go through this whole scene and the next one 2 weeks earlier. 2 weeks earlier? What the hell? Tell me that 2 weeks ago. So chronological. when things are happening in a certain state of being and flow, you you want to keep that going. You don't want these big jumps in time. And I had to do that. I had this 10-book series that covered 150 years. And after the first 4 books, I realized that I've only covered 10 years and I had 140 years to go. So yeah, we jumped like 50 years in between books. It was had to do it because I wasn't going to write on this series for the next 50 years of my life. So sometimes you have to jump, but chronologically understand what happens in this kind of order. Make sure it keeps going from one to the next, and you cover the time and account for the time, because otherwise there's a big gap and people are like, what the hell? Kid's a teenager now and they were 5 years old earlier. What happened? Even if it's a scene break, a geotag where you're talking about, hey, this is in high school and went to middle school, went to high school, was a completely normal kid until simple transition, but it takes the reader without jerking them from one scene to the next, and try to avoid forecasting. Little did he know this horrible thing was going to happen. That's forecasting. They should feel that like, this is I don't understand why everything is going so well. That's like Murphy's Law for combat would tell you, if the battle is going well, it's an ambush. So anyway, that's keep things going smoothly. An open loop is a mini cliffhanger. Yes, indeed, Boyd. Thanks for that. And that's exactly what you're looking for, to get people to then open and start reading the next chapter, because they have to know. That's the way to go. You want them to read the whole book. 7 minutes for a 5-minute focus. I'm out of control. All right, everybody, you have a great day. It's Sunday. We'll be back tomorrow. Peace.